I'm gonna do it to bring up. Okay,
Sweet.
oh, I should have asked if anyone minds if we record or if we don't want to be seen on the Zoom owl, because we can we turn the Zoom out camera off, maybe if anybody has time. That's perfectly fine. Okay, we're all good?
Yeah.
Okay. So, do you think it would be helpful? And wait, why is that looking like that? It
'Cause we're-
shouldn't it be big?
It's because
It's just because it's
cameras,
in Zoom.
yeah.
Oh. Well, maybe you could be turn down the lights a little bit, Stephen, and right next to you, there's a rheostat there.
Much better.
Yeah, is that okay? All right. So, I think most of you, from the introductions, know CEBE and our work very well. The only thing I want to say here, is it was a brilliant design from the beginning to organize the work around community, groups who work on specific aspects of the economy for an organization called the Center for an Ecology-Based Economy, and a focus being the economy. It was just a really brilliant design right from the start. Two of the primary kind of guiding movements, if you'd like to say that, that CEBE was founded upon, was the transition movement founded by Rob Hopkins in Great Britain. Basically, a movement that really elevated the community, pointing out that the community was a place where we can get our hands dirty in the ground, address issues in place together, and have also a lot of flexibility and creativity in how we went about things. There's a little more leeway working at the community level than there is at other levels of governmental organization. Another founding kind of guiding movement was, the permaculture movement, which is still going strong. And permaculture, of course, is grounded in indigenous knowledge and wisdom, just important to point that out. But there's a certain a set of principles, and those principles still continue to this day to lead off our board meetings. We continue to reflect on the meanings of these principles in the work that we're doing. Bioregions fit really well into permaculture principle number 8. Integrate rather than segregate, really recognizing that all elements, everything on Earth and in the cosmos is a part, and everything is a whole. All of us and all parts of us. So it's just a good reminder that when we are designing, we not only have to consider the parts, but the wholes. And I like this graphic here because it does talk about the interaction between these levels of human organizational structure from the individual, as was brought up earlier. If individuals work together, there's just this, you can do enormous things together. And one individual taking initiative in their yard to grow food for pollinators can be really impactful. But then again, when you scale up to the community level, there's more empowerment, we can skill share amongst each other. And that's one of the things that CEBE is really good at, is skill sharing. And then the next level up is bioregional level, and you can see the gradient there, because bioregions, like all the rest, they come in nested scales, depending on really what you're looking at. We're going to talk about what makes a bioregion briefly. But basically, there can be different scales of bioregion, and we'll talk about the different scales that we're working in. And then from the bioregional scale, of course, all the bioregions across the planet make up our biosphere, which is good to keep in mind that it's a very thin relative to the circumference and the volume of the Earth. It's a very thin layer that lies on the surface of our planet and supports the only life that we know of in the entire cosmos. The factors that help to define a bioregion, when you're thinking about it, is of course the topography, the lands, forms, watersheds, the climate, the seasonal features, geography, soils, the biological and ecological features, and very importantly, because we are part of nature, not separate from nature, human culture and life ways are also enormously important in deciding the, if you wish, the boundaries of a bioregion. Oops. No. Go. Good. One way to think about it is the bioregions are small enough to be recognizable as familiar, to feel like home. You can recognize the maple trees and the beech trees and the oak trees and the pine trees and the spruce trees, and you can feel the seasonal change, and you know what a clam is and all of those things. So familiar enough to feel like home and large enough to meet the basic life ways of all the bioregion's inhabitants. And another thing that's known about bioregions, or at least is argued about bioregions, might be a better way to put it, is that bioregions are the scale of greatest potential for transforming planetary significance. Somebody mentioned in their comments that, you know, alone individuals and even alone communities are not, oh, it was you, Jeff, it's not going to be sufficient, or maybe it was you, Kurt, but not going to be sufficient for actually making the global transformational change that's necessary to address the crises that we're facing right now. So we're thinking of our bioregion on a couple of different scales, and all the scale talk is also another way to think about it is linking scales, or scale linking is the terminology that's used. So as we think about linking scales, one bioregional scale that has been defined, fairly well defined by a group called Two Countries, One Forest, is what they call the Northern Appalachian Acadian ecoregion. And we're tending toward just calling it plain old Acadia. Acadia has a meaning of being the land of plenty and abundance in both Algonquin language and in Greek. So that is kind of a cool thing about that word. And it has been used to describe the park, which is on Mount Desert Island, but it's no reason that we can't also use that name for our bioregion. So again, nothing's written in stone here with regard to this. We're just kind of in the early days of defining what this might look like. You can see that actually the people from Two Countries, One Forest worked with Wabanaki partners to help develop their map. And it maps on pretty cleanly to Wabanaki, traditional Wabanaki homelands. And there's a reason for that. People, human beings on the planet have lived bioregionally from time immemorial, for the 200,000 years of modern humans to so modernish humans, and the 800,000 years of humanoid life on the planet. People have lived bioregionally. They have organized their social structure around the land base that supports their life ways. Another nested scale, the bumping up a scale, we're thinking also, and this has been recommended to us by our partners in the Mashantucket Pequot tribe and the Eastern Pequot tribe. We'll talk more about how we're affiliated with those tribes. But they suggested that we also think about defining a bioregional scale that maps onto the eastern woodlands, Algonquin speaking tribes. And what would that size bioregion look like? And we are partnering with people in Connecticut and south of Connecticut. And so this is another scale that we're currently working at. There's a group called One Earth, and they just went ahead and defined what they consider to be 185 discrete bioregions across the planet. And that makes a very beautiful map, and I think there's a lot of wisdom in this map. But the important thing to note here is that bioregions are still in the process of being envisioned, re-envisioned, and also organized around. And so each one is being stewarded into being by the humans that are living within it. And people, Joe Brewer is saying about that is, it's the people in an area that define their bioregion, no one else, no one else. So this may or may not prove out over time, but it's a good start of at least imagining what the world would look like organized into bioregions. One of the longest standing bioregional groups and folks who have been organizing bioregionally on the planet in modern time, not indigenous culture, is Cascadia. So again, I like the Acadia, Cascadia kind of bookend idea there, but you can see it's an enormous region that sweeps from Alaska to Northern California. They've been around for 40 years doing this work since the beginning of the modern bioregional movement, uninterrupted, but I would say within the last, maybe not even 10 years, they've really had a resurgence of energy and organizational capacity. But they already have a beautiful map, they have a flag, they have a department of bioregion. So we've got a lot to learn from groups like Cascadia, and we're very much already affiliated with them and learning from them. So this is one of my favorite thinkers. He's well, initially he was a theologian, and he got so into ecology and indigenous culture, and that he ended up calling himself a geologian. And his name is Thomas Berry. I highly recommend all of his writings. Really brilliant, really beautiful and profound. But he was talking about bioregions back in, this was written in 1988, but as early as the early 1980s, he was writing about bioregions. A bioregion is a self-propagating, self-nourishing, self-educating, self-governing, self-healing, and self-fulfilling community. What I love about that is the bioregion is organizing itself, and so it means that we're all off the hook. No one person's got to do this. No one group of leaders has to do this. This is work that will happen organically, the way that life actually organizes itself on planet Earth. Why is this movement really gaining resurgence? I believe it's because we all can see the writing on the wall. We're in the midst of climate system collapse across planet Earth. And it's not just about the climate. If you, this is a graphic that's taken from the Stockholm Resilience Center, where the scientists there have looked at various systems on planet Earth with regard to like the biogeochemical flows. Where is the nutrient, are the moving, exporting from the land to the sea? Biosphere integrity, which is another way of talking about biodiversity, novel entities, things that are made by humans that cannot be broken down in any human timescale by Earth, which actually has a track record of 4.5 billion years, breaking down all the matter that it came with when it was broken off of the sun, and recycling that over and over and over again. And only suddenly we've created stuff that can't be recycled by Earth. So those novel entities like PFAS, and microplastics, some of which, well, all of those, all of the above can now be found in rainwater and mother's breast milk across planet Earth, whether or not they're in industrialized cultures or not. So they looked at all these systems, and year by year they've upgraded this map, and year by year we've exceeded additional planetary boundaries. And we're currently exceeding 6 of the 9 planetary system boundaries, meaning we're outside of the safe zone for life on planet Earth, way outside in some cases. So Donella Meadows, who was an early pioneer of thinking about what are we doing to planet Earth and how long can we keep this going? And she and a team of scientists and computer engineers, early computer engineers, the computers they were working with at MIT would have filled this room. Were actually got to work on trying to see how long we could keep our current industrial growth pattern going. And they developed some graphics, which I actually should have added in here. I meant to, but I forgot. But one of the scenarios that they looked at was what they called at the time business as usual. And that term has become pretty common in the vernacular, but they coined it initially. And that business as usual trajectory took us just about to where we are now with regard to fossil fuel, just getting to the point where we have exceeded planetary boundaries. The carrying capacity of the Earth is in danger. And there was, what if we make the changes that instead of breaking the system and ramping up until the whole system breaks, what if we bent the trajectory? What if we did some things that really brought down our footprint, our planetary footprint, and then we didn't track in that direction? And so anyway, but she also did a really important thing, and she looked at, okay, we really need to change the current system. It's not one thing, it's a system that created all of these things. And it's a system that's killing us. And again, early systems thinkers. And so what are the various ways that we can tweak the system, change the system, and change the direction of trajectory of humanity? And she ended up saying that those two at the end, the mindset or paradigm and the power, hang on. The power to transcend paradigms, that is basically the highest leverage point, that we just need to change our worldviews, which seems like, oh, okay, that's easy, but not so much. Because we, to a large extent, from this time in 1972, have not managed to do that. But is the mindset shifting? I believe it is. I see evidence of it everywhere. So I believe that maybe our time has come, and hopefully not too late. So what is the current worldview? This is just in a nutshell, and there's so much more to say about this. And there's a lot of history and scholarship around how we develop this mechanistic worldview. But basically, if you boil it down, it's this cultural story of separation. The things that are really highlighted are individualism, a view of life as atomistic, mechanistic, humans separate from nature, humans above nature. So that it's also a hierarchical system. And if we can just take things apart, we can understand them much better. And no matter whether we can never put them back together again. But while that, it's very important to note that while that mechanistic worldview has been holding sway for several hundred years now, there have been those people across the planet who have maintained a different worldview, a life-affirming worldview. It's also sometimes called a kinship worldview, a worldview in which the cultural story is based on interrelatedness and a respect for all life. As an ecologist, this is what I was trained. These are the principles of ecology, that everything is interrelated and that no life form is really that much more important than others because all are needed to make the current system of life that we have. So this is also fits very much into an ecology and also an ecology-based economy, just to remember this kind of kinship worldview and the importance of it. So another thinker, Isabel Carlyle, she writes, bioregioning is something that humans and early pre-humans, hominins, have been done really since the beginning of time. It means living in place, understanding that you're part of the natural systems of that place, and in a sense, working with those natural systems. So she kind of brought in bioregioning to that worldview that we're talking about. This is where we're going to stop for a moment and take a pause and do an exercise. I have some handouts, but before I just want to kind of cue it up and introduce the the exercise. So this is a worldview chart developed by a gentleman who goes by the name of Four Arrows. Wonkinpa Topa is how the Four Arrows is said in his
Roberta,
language.
Roberta,
Yes?
excuse me. We've lost being able to see any slides.
Okay, hang on. We're
Thanks.
going to go back and find out what happened. So I'm just going to try to share again, and hopefully that will work.
Thank you.
Yes?
Great. Yep, thank you.
Thank you so much for letting us know. So this is a chart that he worked on and published in one of his books. Whoops. And it's published. How did I go back? Published in his second book now as well. But basically he talked about this. It's not a rigid binary between one worldview and another. That there's a common dominant worldview manifestations and common indigenous worldview manifestations. And that all of us are on the spectrum in each one of these manifestations. We're somewhere on that spectrum. And according to Four Arrows, our task is to bring our thinking closer and closer to this the indigenous worldview manifestations. I like what he says. He says the indigenous worldview does not belong to a race or group of people, but indigenous cultures who still hold on to their traditional place-based knowledge are the wisdom keepers of this original nature-based worldview. All people are indigenous to Earth and have a right and responsibility to practice and teach indigenous worldview precepts. All have the responsibility to support indigenous sovereignty, dignity, and use of traditional lands. So given that, we have been given permission to work with these precepts. Lights, please. And I've also got something, stop sharing so I can put something in the, oh wait, I put it in the chat anyway. Sorry, but I'm gonna put something in the chat right now. For you folks at home. Here. Oh, I put it. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna get you guys going. And then it's gonna take me a little longer for you folks. I had it all queued up, but when I got out of sharing, I got rid of it. And apologies, but because there are 40 different manifestations. But maybe have that. We're gonna, and actually, I might just start with every other, because we're gonna. And I want you just to look at this lesson. It's actually good randomly. Oh, yeah. If you're glad you said and tell your person next to you. Any thoughts that come to mind for that? Maybe you yourself have moved along the spectrum recently. Maybe you know a story of somebody who started out in one part of the spectrum and moved along, or even just reflections on that spectrum. Anything you'd like to say for about a minute or two would be helpful, and then switch in the other direction. And I'm gonna try to get you guys going.
Choose two from each column. Choose one.
No, well, yeah, choose.
Like we are.
I choose 11 anthropocenic to 11 animistic and biocentric. That's a spectrum right there. So those are your two. On one end is anthropocenic, and the other end is animistic biocentric. And then you just reflect on that for a minute or so. And then your partner is going to do the same. They're going to pick different line. And they're gonna reflect on that with you, and then you can discuss it.
Thank you, Richie. All right, so I'm gonna mute this.
Okay, so I think we're muted in the room. So I think if all of those on Zoom, I think we can come off mute, and that link is let me know if that link works, if it's not just for staff.
Yeah, we need access.
Okay, let me download it and redo it.
Yeah.
Try Docs.
I'm driving, so I can't be reading anything.
No worries. Try that one. I just put it into a Google Doc. Anybody can
Got it.
drop it. It looks a little bit funny, but I think it will work. Google Docs
That works.
messes up PDFs.
Yep.
Mm.
It's funny, I feel like as I don't know, as communities, we have moved along on the spectrum on number 3, living without strong social purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, oh, do you want us to move or are we gonna do this together? Sorry.
Oh,
Should we join room 2? I
I
have.
was- yeah, I guess I'm assuming we're all joining that room.
No, because I have joined room 1.
Oh,
Okay.
All right.
Roberta, can you hear us? Should we all just join the one room because there's not that many of us online?
Can we just start as we are and not join any room? Create 2 in a group of 3.
I think everybody's jumped on them. I'm gonna jump on mine for room
Oh.
2.
Okay.
And it seems to be congruent with his life too. He basically focused in on 2 years, and I reflected. I can kind of see that in a way in my own, my own way. And then it did merge with what I pointed out. I didn't get very far down the list. I got to like the number 2. I was like, all right, that's it. Because I think like fear-based thoughts and behaviors versus courage and fearlessness and trust in the universe is absolutely huge. Learning it from personal experience and then kind of making it, and the nutshell that I kind of ended with, and talking to Carl, was that I feel like the basis of it is caring, right? And if we all basically agree that everybody deserves that, then you want to basically create a safe place. You want to then be able to have a discussion in that place. You want to have a conflict resolution mechanism for that, and then you basically just spend time. This is something that's been building over time, and that some of the thoughts that have come to me recently actually already echoed in some of the things that are being said today.
That's great.
So anyway,
That's perfect. That's, did anyone in the Zoom space want to reflect? What happened here? So just go ahead. Anybody? Embracing the pause.
And we were just talking about number 4 in the dominant worldview, focus on self and personal gain, and just how, the selfish nature of things.
And it's really, I went down through them myself and was reflecting on my own self at another time. And it's really interesting to see that you've made this transition in quite a few of them. I don't know if you looked at all, but then there's some that you think, probably could do better there, right? So, and again, it's just a nice thing to think about, and hopefully that will be a helpful tool for you to contemplate. So how do we get, I'm gonna go back to shared business. Hang on. Why am I not on the your best? Okay. So that's that. One more. So how do we get from the Methodistic worldview to the kinship worldview? It's really, I think, very helpful to think about this in terms of horizons. We can't see the path from here to there, and it will take generations. We're just starting this work. And it will take generations to make a complete transition. And we can't see what's on that far horizon, though maybe we see a fuzzy shape, we get an idea. But when we get to the next horizon, we'll be able to see the next horizon a little better, right? So it's a very useful kind of analogy to think about this work. And go back to the wisdom of Thomas Berry. Well, Sam, you being a fan, do you want to help me read this?
Sure, up there.
Yep.
Yeah, the industrial context in which we presently function cannot be changed significantly in the immediate future. Our immediate survival is bound up in this context, with all its beneficial as well as its destructive aspect. What is needed, however, is a comprehensive change in the control and direction of the energies available to us. Most of all, we need to alter our commitment from the industrial wonder world achieved by plundering processes to an integral Earth community based on a mutually enhancing human-Earth relationship. This move from an anthropocentric sense of reality and value to a biocentric one is essential.
Thank you so much. So what he's saying is this is the time to make the alteration or the shift in our direction. And so we're not going to be the ones to finish this work, but we are the ones, the only one, this generation right now,
That's right.
you and the eldest person in this room, who's probably me. This is the work of our time.
No, it isn't you.
It's not. Oh, really?
And this is the work of, this is our shared work of this time, is to make that pivot, is what Thomas Perry is saying, I believe. So what might this look like? We're currently in a dominant extractive economy. We are moving toward the next horizon, which is a less extractive economy, one that maximizes value. And what I mean by value is seeing the value in things that currently are not given any value in our current economy. So maximizing value and quality. So if we actually produce something, it's of high quality that we don't need to bring to the repair cafe the next week because it's broken. That's gonna last a while. Minimizes material use. So how can we make cool stuff? Much less materials, much less waste, much less pollution. That's a really clear goal that you could pretty much run any widget by and say, does it meet this criteria or not? And so that's a good guiding principle. The next phase, and actually I wanted to say that this is adapted from the work of Tom Chi, who is was an Uber entrepreneur, very successful business person that had a near-death experience and completely kind of had a big mind shift. This is based on his work. The next horizon, surely ecology-based economy. Human systems are in complete harmony with living systems. We are a ways from that, but that's possibly the next horizon. And then after that, we've got a truly regenerative economy. And we'll talk about that word in just a moment, because it's bandied about an awful lot and is even getting kind of a bum rap in some circles. So I want to make it clear what I mean about that. Maximizing diverse energy flows. So rather than a photon landing on a pavement, disseminating its heat and then bouncing some of it back to the atmosphere, what happens if that photon hits a leaf, a blade of grass, and the grass is eaten by a critter who's eaten by another critter who then goes through all of the chain of life over and over again. So how can we maximize those diverse and continuous energy flows in everything that we do? So this is a very inspiring thinker. She just currently finished her PhD dissertation, which is, the name of it is here, Architects of Abundance, where she looked at indigenous culture across the planet, especially on Turtle Island. She is a Dene woman and from the southwest or the southwest of North America. And she looked at these cultures and saw the amazing ways that they created much more biodiversity on the landscape than was there before the humans came along. And she says that regeneration means leaving the land better than we found it, as simple as that. Not the same as we found it, not damage, not like, oh, we have a limit for how much you can pollute before, people start having babies with all kinds of birth defects. Not looking that way, actually leaving things better than we found it. That's regenerative practice. And also reminding us that human beings are meant to be a gift to the land. That's our legacy, and that's our deep human culture. That is who we are as a species. So back to the beaver and the beaver movement. The beaver has become somewhat of our mascot for this bioregional work, because the beaver is just a beautiful example of a keystone species who makes life happen more abundantly and more diverse when they move onto the scene. So how can we as humans once again become a beneficial keystone species? We started this work with saying that we're going to work as much as we can to the greatest extent possible by supporting the indigenous people who have lived on this land and who emerged in place here in this place we call Maine to achieve their own the full respect of their own inherent sovereignty as peoples, And in doing so, help make wise decisions for how we should move forward. So rather than asking them to support our work, we asked, what can we do to support you and your work? And CB joined the Wabanaki Alliance Tribal Coalition. And we are tabling all over the state and showing up whenever we can to help them achieve that goal. So if you are not currently on their mailing list, I really recommend that you go check out Wabanaki Alliance. And also if you are a business person, even a very small business person, they're looking for businesses, church and other faith groups and non-governmental organizations to join the tribal coalition. So that when they go to the legislature to try to make the changes that are necessary for them to achieve their full sovereignty, they will know that they have a big coalition of people on their side, and they can say all of these orgs and businesses are standing shoulder to shoulder with us. It's very important. Another thing that we did is aligned with the Design School for Regenerating Earth. People have mentioned Joe Brewer. He wrote the book Design Pathway for Regenerating Earth, which was really such an inspiration to me. I was on the CEBE board at the time, read the book, got deeply into it, spent a year kind of trying to envision what this would look like for CEBE to participate in this work. And then as Azalea said, went to the board and made a pitch for them to fire me from the board and hire me on staff. And the rest is history. But Joe says the future will be bioregional, and I think he's absolutely right about that. If there is a future, it's going to be bioregional. So that's one thing we did, another thing we did, and then we started integrating bioregionalism into our convergences. So the first year was 2023. I co-collaborated with, I think, Amy, you're there, but Amy and Lee Dass or somebody from Western Foothills Land Trust was part of that talk about not just bioregionally, but working with indigenous partners to kind of practice this idea of thinking both with the eyes of Western science and culture and also the eyes of indigenous wisdom keepers. And so that was 2023. 2024, we had a bioregional panel. Megan was part of that. Oops, I keep touching something. I should have been. Megan was part of that panel. Conrad Riding from Two Countries, One Forest. Our own John Gunn. John is on our advisory board here at CEBE. That was a really wonderful and well-received panel. And then this past year, 2025 Convergence, we actually had a full bioregional track and invited people from across the northeastern woodlands bioregioning the collective to participate. And all of these wonderful folks showed up and really offered a real holistic look at what bioregioning could look like. We also launched our bioregioning website. We created a new working group. We're integrating a bioregional approach and a living systems approach into our youth education and teacher professional development work. We're doing statewide outreach. This was the Common Ground Fair 2 years in a row. We've been there. Last year, I actually did a bioregioning talk. We had never been there before. To the CEBE had never been an exhibitor or a speaker at the Common Ground Fair. So not knowing much about us, they gave us the last slot of the day in the tent right next to the train tracks. And I was watching all day to see how many people were showing up to go to that tent, and it'd be like 2 people, 3 people. So I had a crowd, and I was like really happy about the showing for that. We launched an inland flood project originally. It's just recently expanded to an inland flood, inland flood and drought monitoring project, a citizen science project where people can monitor flood prone, drought prone sites, report what they're seeing, tell stories about, how their community is working to, build, flood resilience, how they responded to a particular flood, so we can, again, sharing that information, so that we can all benefit from it. And that project has really gained a lot of steam. We started off, our original partners were Androscoggin River Watershed Council, the Gulf of Maine Research Institute, CEBE, and the Oxford County Emergency Management Agency. And since then, the Nature Conservancy, Mount Washington Observatory, Northeastern University, and Andrew Valley Council of Governments have all joined on as project partners. So that's exciting. We were invited, specifically CEBE, and I'm representing CEBE on a team of people that's working on what's called a bioregional living atlas project. And I was gifted a fellowship to be part of that team, looking at a 3 watershed area that coincides with our own region. So this is really nice. I'm going to be learning a lot more about story mapping, which is going to be an important tool that we'll be using moving forward, and collecting some really vital and useful data. So that's been really fun working with those folks. Where am I? It has a mind of its own stuff. CEBE is a founding member of the Northeast Woodlands Bioregional Collective. 20 or so organizations across that region that we looked at before, at Eastern Algonquin, Homeland Territory, from the Maritimes down to, actually it goes down to the northeastern part of North Carolina. And importantly, the Mashantucket Pequot tribe, the Eastern Pequot tribe, and what is now being called the Intertribal Alliance, which will grow to include the Wabanaki. We're partnering with all of those folks to again see how we can work collectively together for the benefit of all. Our mission is here to regenerate our land and water and communities, and do it in a way that our cultural practices will be reciprocal of natural ones. Our values, pretty straightforward, but again, very much in keeping with Indigenous thinking. And we are making a full-bodied commitment to rebuilding relations with the Indigenous co-creators of our landscape. We've had a number of in-person convenings. This was one of the first that I attended at Sirius Community, which is in Shutesbury, Massachusetts. And in a beautiful center there, modeled, the whole Sirius community is modeled on Findhorn. Have you ever heard of that intention? It was one of the first intentional communities in Europe. And these people who founded Sirius went over there, spent years living there, and decided to come back and found a similar intentional community in central Massachusetts. Anyway, beautiful convening there. And the purpose of this particular one was to pitch ideas from our part of the bioregion that could be carried on this ship to a bunch of gazillionaires who were interested in regenerative transformation. And so this is a little recap of what was called the transatlantic crossing. It was a 240-meter luxury yacht. You could argue that maybe that wasn't the best convening place. 10 nights and days, 370 guests, and an equally large crew. It went from Lisbon to Puerto Rico at roughly the speed of a cruising e-bike. It was organized by that same group I mentioned earlier, Earth One. And on board was this eclectic mixture of activists, entrepreneurs, scientists, artists, investors, Web3 enthusiasts, Indigenous elders, and the funders who had sponsored most of the trip. So they were obviously willing to put some money in to listen to people who had ideas for how they could move forward with their money and ensure that there would still be a planet on which to have an economy. This guy, Felix DeRosa, who did this article on Substack, said he called it a passionate and diverse Noah's Ark of 21st century change makers. And one of our ideas was pitched on that book. So we also were invited to be part of the BioFi cultivator. And I'll talk more about what BioFi is about, but here we are, the Northeast Bioregioning Collective, and I was a representative of the collective in the cultivator. 3 members of each of these groups was selected, and I was one of the 3 representing CEBE again. And this idea of bioregional finance and actually the structure in which the bioregional finance will be facilitated are bioregional finance facilities, otherwise known as BFFs. Which is kind of fun, because if you look at BFF, it's like the best friend's friend. Is that right? Best friend's what? Forever, yeah. Anyway, so this is a new approach which will center on regeneration of extraction, embracing the fractal, both fractal and nested systems again, and holistic structures, not rigid hierarchies. And it will distribute energy, nutrients, information, and money, like flows in natural systems, and it will function on all scales, reflecting ecological principles. 4 types of BFFs have been identified by the person who wrote the book on bioregional finance facilities. Her name is Samantha Power. She worked with another fellow, Lee Seafield, on this tome. And the 4 facilities, I won't go into all of them, but there's 2 that make a lot of sense for us at the scale that we're operating. One is a bioregional trust, basically a trust like a foundation in which flows of money come in from philanthropy, from investors, and then there's some kind of governance structure that helps to decide how this money could be distributed at smaller scale. And so again, just getting the money to the people on the ground who can make decisions about where best that money could be used for the benefit of all and bioregionally. And then a bioregional venture studio, CEBE, has been an incubator for many wonderful ideas, including the main community power cooperative. And so we actually have some experience in being a venture studio. The idea is that the funders, who are like the light coming in on the leaves, that money will flow down through the bioregional finance facilities out to the people on the ground doing the work. And so we do have a bunch of projects that are under development. We're not going to talk about all of them. First and foremost, we're supporting First Light and Wabanaki Commission-led land back projects. We believe in Indigenous resurgence, and that we'll all be better off when we are paying heed to those again who emerged in this place and helping to heal the inequities that have ensued since colonization. Funding to support Wabanaki participation. We would at some point very much hope that Wabanaki people will be participating in these projects, and we would like to have funding to help support their time. Also, we have the idea of developing a bioregional living and learning center, perhaps at Robert's Farm. We've talked to Western Foothills Land Trust about it. And it's one idea. If the money would be there, I think it's a possibility. There's all kinds of good historical reasons why that site makes sense, or similar, depending on the opportunities that come up. We also have Scott and I hatched what we think is a potentially extremely important project that we're calling the Bioregional Coherence Project, and I'd love to talk a little bit about that. And then, of course, the Inland Flood and Drought Project has the potential to grow from a pilot project at this scale to a bioregionally expanded project, and then to develop a BFF, bioregional finance facility, that flow funds to local and sub-regional regenerators. And we would like to make sure that we make room for seasonal in-person meetings across Acadia. So move around with the season to different parts of our bioregion y'all are welcome to come and check out what people are doing in other parts of our bioregion. On the Living and Learning Center, it's possible that we could have it, as I mentioned, here at Roberts Farm. And I'm not gonna say an awful lot more about that Roberts Farm site. But I will say what, again, Donella Meadows, wise person, had to say. She envisioned, and she was the first to really articulate of what a bioregional learning center was and why it was so central to moving forward to do this worldview change. Bioregional learning centers, or BLCs, will be able to enhance the capacity to solve problems in ways that are consistent with the culture and the environment that's hatching them. These ideas, bioregional learning centers will be able to collect and make sense of and disseminate information about the bioregion, including the welfare of people and the ecosystems. They're part data repositories, part ways of getting the word out, teaching centers, experimental stations. They'll have knowledge about the latest technologies, but also be tempered by understanding the traditional technologies as well, knowing which technologies to use under which conditions, and to really practice that idea of two-eyed seeing, and to be guided by systems thinking and consideration of long-term consequences. We make so many decisions with just tomorrow or at best next year in mind, and we want to start thinking in longer term schemes. So that was that. And then just important to say that they'll be guided by their values, as all this work has to be guided by our values, that many of these values are very universal to all cultures of the world, but they will be articulated on the ground by the discrete communities through which they're being practiced. That there will be mycelial connectivity between bioregional learning centers. They're not just one center, but nodes of these centers across the landscape. And I want to point out a really good example of what might become one of our first sister bioregional learning centers. If we manage to get one here in our area, would be the Maine Local Living School. It's functioning exactly like the bioregional learning center. And if you don't know much about their work, I know Chris will help us understand it more in the discussion, but I really recommend that you go and check out their programming. It's a beautiful example of what a bioregional learning center would look like. The other project I wanted to highlight, and then we'll stop, is the Bioregional Coherence Project. And this idea is to create a platform, an interface for humans to interact on the landscape. So there'll be ecological, cultural, technological, and a geospatial interface for organizing, sharing, celebrating regenerative projects, programs, and experiences across our bioregion. Could we pilot this here in Acadia? I'm arguing yeah. And it will be a user-friendly portal where if you have a project, like say the Maine Local Living School wants to do some new planting and could use some additional hands, they could list that project on the site, and it would be broadcast out to people who might be looking. So the next group would be people who are searching for opportunities to learn and practice and become skilled up and to share skills with others. So you'll be able to search by opportunities by type and date, location, accommodations, accessibility, the skills that might be required. So it will function somewhat like a eco-tourism site, something like a dating app, something like a really robust GIS-based story map, and be a combination of all of those things. Money could also flow through the system. And so there might be, the projects could be like regenerative projects. We could have regenerative businesses, enterprises, modeling best practices, educational and cultural events, convenings, learning journeys, links.
You could add a dating site to it too.
We could add that. This is really exciting. Eco travel routes. So there are all the hiking trails, bike routes, paddling, sailing, ferry routes. and public transportation routes that join the stations. So you could actually get people, the idea would be to inspire people to, like they are inspired to do the AT, they'd be inspired to do the journey through the bioregion, learning along the way. It would include public lands and open spaces where people can rest and reflect and get re-energized and learn directly from the source herself, our Mother Earth, and also supplies. So where can we go to a store where they've got some things that we might need, or places where we can get locally sourced food or drink or materials? All of that could be on it. The beauty of this project, and go back to the Thomas Berry quote, is that if we design it correctly, that the bioregion itself will start creating these nodes of connection, because it won't be any one person designing this. Once the platform is designed, it will design the connections will create themselves organically, person to person. And it's also another beautiful thing about it is it will use the existing technology today to create the relationships that will sustain us even if the technology, and it may, goes away someday. So it will put itself out of business in time, and that's okay. And we're going to really work hard to get Indigenous leadership in the design so that we make sure that this technology is not going to recreate past harmful structures, but will integrate wisdom into the technology. And we have a network that has already looked at the project and is ready to go on helping us develop it. We've developed we can talk more about it, but we've got a budget for the project already. We'll save a lot of money if we did go with Flynn, because they have developed similar platforms around the world. Their business model is not on selling stuff to people through social media. It's on making regenerative connection across the world. I love this. This just came out in her LinkedIn feed yesterday, and I thought, yeah, that's perfect. Finally, a social network whose CEO is an sociopath. So future, this is one last quote from Donella Meadows. Future can't be predicted, but it can be envisioned and brought lovingly into being. And so now the discussion is, what can we lovingly bring into being together? And I'm going to just completely clam up and let others take the conversation from here. Connect with me if, connect with me. And just one little announcement is that after tonight, I will send out some links to the slide deck, a Google form to help us start organizing ourselves, and ongoing invitation for any feedback that comes to you over the days and weeks to come. And with that, I will stop sharing, and thank you so much for.
Woo!
So, how do you want to organize I think it would be wonderful if we could learn more about how you think your work might integrate with some of the ideas that we've posed here. Conversely, how our vision of where we would like to go could, and what we're doing, help you in your work. How can we integrate for the benefit of all of us, and for us and for future generations? That's the question, and I think anyone can take it away. And do I need to do that? No, I'm seeing on Zoom now, right?
Yeah, you're good.
Can I even?
And I'm gonna take a couple notes. Yes.
So please,
Oh.
somebody, what happened?
But if you wanted this part to be recorded,
Oh, okay, that's right.
then you should stay on the Zoom.
I will.
Yeah.
I'm also recording notes if you.
We'll have people looking at themselves.
You can also turn your camera off.
Yeah, of course.
Unless you want to look at people's feet, I guess that's. Often.
Yes, we have about half an hour for discussion until 8 and.
And if anyone wants to say later, I'm there.
Yeah, okay, I have kind of comment on a couple levels. number one, I really appreciate, you know, the more deep into articulation of what this means, really. Roberta, like many others, was my way to kind of like get more involved, like, you know, because we were literally up at the Common Ground Fair. And we were talking, she was one of the number of people I was talking to about this whole concept, and then she showed through Brewer's book with me. I read over like the winter. In any case, I am Bridgeton, and I love seeing, like, when you mentioned that, you know, the fellowship, and that, and I keep seeing the overlapping. I know we have some land trust people here. I've learned that the land trust and sort of watersheds, you know, all this stuff is sort of like the idea of needing to look at this collectively and as a region seems to be a continuing theme, which is powerful. I see Bridgeton as kind of like where I live as a maybe important place in that. Along with, like, we have little satellites of little wonderful towns like Bethel, and you know, and there's a lot of offerings there, cultural, that can also layer into all this. But I definitely see how and I want to explore how to integrate this into my town, Meltown.
You know, the project, the inland flood and drought project, we just applied for a grant. I think we have a pretty good shot at getting it to kind of shift our pilot area to include the Casco Bay watershed. So go from Bethel down through Bridgeton and through Sebago and so on. So so that'd be one way.
Yeah, actually, yeah, the water's a whole other big piece of this, because I just saw a map of the drought Maine, and we're kind of like in the hottest.
We are in the hottest
Like,
part.
basically, and we know people like maybe Sakura keep like throwing up the flares and making me aware of what's going on. So yeah, that's another one, along with the PFAS and the quality of that water. But I also had a thought. I met someone just a couple of days ago who was in a master's degree in well, a doctorate actually in genocide studies, among other things. You know, I was compelled to continue talking to her because it was like we were feeling the moment, right? It's like we need to kind of keep talking. I just kind of feel like there's something here. Anyway, not to digress too much, but I got up with a thought this morning, and I was triggered a couple of times in the conversation. And I want to, you know, talk to you about this too. And I think maybe some of the answer you may have given some of the answer, but like when you talk about like being more congruent with the indigenous people, and of course, all of us returning to that. I was thinking, like, you know, I think that maybe the indigenous folks are having, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because this is like cliff notes, but they have not maybe gotten as far in Maine and some other places in terms of sovereignty. So the question in my mind this morning popped up, and it's in the context of the elections and all that other stuff. But I'm just thinking, like, what could we do to strengthen that or acknowledge that would also, right at this moment, we're literally the precepts or the concepts of what we need to survive. What overlap is there that actually protects us statewide or whatever? It's an open question. I'm not an expert, but I know that there's some people in the room might have some thoughts on it, so. Maybe for later, you know.
I think just one quick response is I think that's a big part of the Wabanaki Alliance work that
Yeah.
we're a part of and prioritizing is that's their
Yeah.
main goal is forwarding that.
There may be
but
some way
that
to
goes more
throw
to-
roadblocks in the way of what's coming at us. Yeah.
Just in terms of the current governmental situation you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, we have demands on our water, you know, we have data centers, like somebody, like, I kind of, I'm showing up my spine when somebody mentioned Sebago. And water use in some data centers the other day, I heard about Wisconsin possibly, and it's like, that's just one of a number of different, you know, we get the drought challenge at the same time, so. And you know, we have the principles which should be actually helping to write this issue, so.
The one thing I'll say, and this is, because it is hard, I make a point to, I feel like it's my responsibility as a human to pay attention to current events, which is grim. But, I think that the government has a potential role to play in creating this more reasonable world in the future that we know is possible. But if they're not doing that, which they are not doing now, that we just keep moving forward on this work. Because one way or another, if there is complete collapse, there's gonna be need for nodes of sanity and cultural coherence. And it's gonna need to be food that is grown and so on. So if things go really bad, there's gonna be a need. If things start getting better, there's gonna need to be people who can kind of lead the way, because we've been practicing these practices in place for some time. So one way or another, just continuing to move forward seems to make sense to me. So,
I noticed on one of the slides that one of your partners or supporters is the Capital Institute.
yeah.
Do you know John Fullerton?
I don't know him personally. But I just met him.
You do? Okay, well, well, a friend of mine, he was an opera singer and a phenomenal educator and many other things. And I are working with him because he is very excited about how the arts are a powerful way for people to begin to understand things better, to heal them, and for the worldview to shift. You know, something else, and tomorrow at 12 noon is he's launching his book called Regenerative Economics.
Saw that
So
today.
at 12 o'clock, so if you can find the link. But he is a most remarkable person, and other people that he's working with were also fortunate to be connected with them. So if there's anything that you dream up that you want some support for, he is a very good, his history.
Mm.
And in the year 2000, approximately 2001, he was a big player with JP Morgan. And he woke up one morning having an epiphany and saying, "Oh my God, I am helping to destroy the planet." And he founded the Capital Institute. He has courses going now worldwide with regenerative economics. I noticed that you and both said that the word regenerative is problematic, but I also saw it many
Right.
times
Yeah,
up
just
on
have
the
to make
up
sure
on the
you know.
author, so we need to talk about that. Why you see it as a problem. And then my last thought is, I don't, with all due respect to Joe Brewer, I think it's Joe Brewer.
Mhm.
I don't quite sit comfortably with that statement up there that the people are the only ones to decide something about the virus,
Right.
whatever that is. Just, it seems to me that it'd be important from the beginning to acknowledge that the Beavers and others are just as. And my last very gift to you is, does anyone else know that watching a beaver eat a sweet potato will reduce your stress by 17%?
Unless you're hungry, Brent.
And you've seen that video, it's fantastic.
We have
I'll have to
wisdom here, and you're gonna be leaving for a little while. You'll be back, I know. But could you talk a little bit about your interaction with John Fullerton? And I will just say one other thing about John Fullerton, in that he came to our first Northeast Woodlands Bioregional Collective convening at the Foundation House, and after that meeting, dropped a very nice donation into the pot, which we have not yet spent. So it is, he was our earliest supporter, so that's very cool, but.
I'm glad to know that because I'll be talking to you anytime soon.
We'll volunteer.
Yeah, okay, that's wonderful, I love it.
But did you wanna say anything
Yeah,
about that,
sure.
Devin?
So Samantha Power, who was sort of mentioned, wrote the book, the bioregional finance facilities with this gentleman. Just kind of called this summit in Western Mass. Roberta was invited to represent CEBE. It's very interesting because it was a very small group of people. And there were only 2 organizations from this, we call it NUBC, the Northeast Woodlands Bioregional Collective, from NUBC that were actually represented there as organizations. And one was down in Connecticut, in the Mystic River Watershed, because they've really made headway into working in partnership in tandem with the indigenous communities there, Mohegan and Pequot tribes. But John Fullerton was there, and there were it was mind blowing for me, okay, because we're used to like scraping around for crumbs, and these guys were talking about billions and literally like trillions of dollars of wealth that's about to cascade down from this older generation to this new generation that sees the need to put that money to use doing good for the people on the planet, because they can see the handwriting on the wall and they realize they can't eat money. So this conversation was really robust, and there were these regenerative economists in this circle. I mean, we were sitting outside barefoot at this meditation center. This was not a conference or anything. I got busted when I was leaving the house. I was a little scruffy, and my partner's like, "You're gonna go like that?" And I'm like, "Put pants on." And I got out there, and everybody's like, this was a very grounded group of people. This was not like a bunch of what I imagined as economists, but there were also all these permaculturists there. And then I started realizing that this regenerative economics is super grounded in permaculture. And if you look at BioFi, if you go to biofi.earth, you can see that whole platform, and you can link the book. The book is free to stream off of that. And it's a lot of, I think, very brilliant thinking about how we kind of de-extract all this, we've extracted all this capital from this planet, from people, and how we take that capital and repurpose it to regenerate the degeneration that's happened in the creation of that capital, and this reverse flow. And these are some of the smartest people I have ever sat with, and they're doing work on the ground around the planet at the bioregional scale. Samantha and her partner Tyler are working on a bioregional finance facility in the Amazon, and working with a lot of tribal people down there to regenerate a lot of the damage that has happened. They're working with other partners in other parts of the world on these regenerative projects. And they were here in the Northeast because of what's going on, this organizing that's going on, especially out in that Western Mass area where serious community and a lot of other action. It's that Happy Valley where there's lots of cool stuff going on down there. But they also, so they invited CEBE. The word was because we actually do things on the ground. We are a kind of
You used the term in your newsletter this week, scrappy.
we're scrappy. We're scrappy. But we do stuff. We don't just talk about stuff. We don't, and we kind of, a concept that came to me from this was David Bollier was there. He's like the person who's written a lot about reclaiming the commons and what it means to have a commons, and how this whole tragedy of the commons was kind of a hoax. The whole concept of that was just a thought experiment. And it's been taken, of course, the tragedy of the commons, it'll never work. You can't let people have access to anything because they'll just destroy it. And, well, this is not true. And it's the only way the society has kind of developed. So just all the thinking in that space was about how to reclaim the commons and reclaim this wealth that has been extracted and put it back onto the earth in a regenerative way. And on the other side of this circle were all these permaculturists doing the work out in the world. And it was kind of the most hopeful 3 days I've spent in a long, long time. It's really, and one of the big pictures around that was like that we need to tell these stories better. And we need to not get to people in their heads, but get them in their hearts. Like the work that you do, the music, the arts. Like we need a much broader concept of how we should do this culture shift.
Right.
And so I think seeds were planted there, and I said this to them the other day. We just met again digital on Zoom, and we're gonna all reconvene up in the Berkshires here Sam and Tyler are giving the Schumacher lecture, which is a big damn deal. It's once a year, like, you know, epic thinkers have done that. And so this thinking is getting a lot of traction, and some people that have some resources to make this stuff happen. Or so anyway, I'll stop there.
Yeah, let me share a line from the oratorio that always gets people is from Thomas Berry. Nothing is itself without everything else. And so just a quick return to regenerative economics. It's based on, as John says this all the time, it's basically simply based on living systems. And there are no billionaires in the natural world. Okay, that has never worked, never will. And there is no waste, everything finds its way. And then somehow we also have to deal with the emergency. We don't have several generations for people to learn this stuff. There's gonna be there's something coming that is going to be more like a phase shift or a punctuated evolutionary moment. That's what. And yeah, so all hands on deck, everything matters. It matters a lot. Yeah.
Speaking of the commons, I wondered if Ethan, has you been living in the commons? For how many years has that project been part of your life?
25.
Yeah, 25 years. Did you want to say anything about that, like the idea of, you know, how that model that you have at this microcosm kind of scale, and it's a community, but it's not the size of like Norway, right? It's a smaller community, but how that lessons learned from that, like some of the lessons learned from that could be extended to what we're talking about. I'm just curious.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I mean, maybe for the sake of this conversation, I would just highlight the dimension of land more broadly. And I think, like, when we're talking about building different kinds of bioregional features, I mean, probably because of this experience on the land and then work with land in common, thinking about what it means to be living on, what it means for me to be a settler living on stolen land, like that's really the origins of land in common was this community living together and saying like, okay, we've been renting for, you know, well, at that point it was like 8 years, and we have the opportunity to buy this land. And but what does it mean to buy stolen land? Like no matter how cool we think we are and how radical and anti-capitalist we think we are, commenting on stolen land is still colonialism. And so without a pathway to building accountable relationships with indigenous people. And so I think for us, like, I mean, we kind of knew that. So we were like, okay, well, we don't want private property, clearly. Like, we don't want to be able to buy and sell this land, but we didn't have accountable relationships with indigenous people. Like, that took years to get to that point. And it's so late. It's always an ongoing like relationship, it's a process, right? Like not a place that we arrive at. But I think for me that just has me sitting with, like, no matter what we're talking about, it comes back to the land on some level. Like, we don't do reasoning without land. And if we're talking about land, we're in a system where most land is private property, which means that no matter how well intentioned we are, in the end, that land will turn into a commodity. Because most of us who get to own land end up having to betray the land in order to live. Like, we love it, it's not a commodity while we're on it. We have all these good intentions, and then we need to like go to a retirement home or have medical expenses or want to pass something on to our kids, and then the land is a commodity.
And like, how do we stop that cycle? Feels like one of the most important questions I can think of for how do we build the bioregional base. And so, like, I just want us to collectively sit with that question of, like, what are the structural tools that we need? And what are the like cultural tools, the community tools, like, what are the resilient forms of commenting that we need to decommodify land permanently? Put it in the control of our communities and do that in an accountable way with Wabanaki leadership. So, like, for me, I just really want that question to be at the heart of whatever this work is. And partially, so we're also making sure that, like, if we're building lifeboats and arcs and all that stuff, like, who gets access to them, right? Like, is it mostly white folks who come from some relative privilege who get to survive? And like, what's the responsibility of folks with privilege to make sure that that's not the bioregion that we're, because then our bioregion is going to recreate the same old patterns over and over again, right? Unless we get to the heart of that colonialism and dispossession.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing those things, because they are, and those are been questions that that have been top of mind since we have started this work. But you're right, it does take time to build the relationships that you can even start exploring those questions. So, thank you for that. Thank you. I'm really glad you came. And also, I really wanted to hear from you, Chris, because again, we've mentioned the local living school a few times. If you wanted to say more about, you had an idea of how that might integrate into the bioregional coherence project, like if you wanted to talk a bit about that.
Yeah. And thanks for that last comment. And I mean, you started with saying like everything happens on land, and I feel like that's really important with all of this work, where it's like it's bubbly, and this is connection, and we have to like it does all happen here around our feet. So I have a vision that's kind of on the bubbly side. And was just in a meeting yesterday with a bunch of leadership at Croak Expeditions, which is a wilderness / yeah, they run semester programs, they run a summer camp, and was sort of like a wilderness consciousness mission. And I've been working with them for actually quite a while, like more than 20 years of leading extensive journeys, 5 or so month journeys on landscape. But they have a vision, and I've been having sort of a similar vision because our work at Maine Local Living School, which Kaylee stepped into last spring as an apprentice, is sort of pulling from this seemingly endless pool of like post-college or never went to college, it's youth who are knowing that higher ed isn't teaching them what they want to learn, and they're really curious about what deep education about living in place looks like and what community living feels like, and they want some kind of like embodied experience and reskilling experience, and so that engine is sort of nicely running at Maine Local Living School. And at Croca, they're seeing that their semester programs aren't serving this like 20 to 30-year-old population who are coming to them saying, I want a job, but really they want community and they want skills. Like that's actually what they want. They want to learn how to live and feel responsible towards Earth and work with the forces that actually are. And so we were envisioning a program that would serve this population. And it does, there's so much connectivity with your coherence project vision. And at the same time, this demographic of people is, I would say, consistently, on a fence between despair and like real hope and elation, and then go either direction. And so part of that coherence project vision that we're working with is to connect all of the in the dirt, hands on the ground, powerful initiatives that are happening in this bioregion, those nodes, And connect them via human travel, which most logically would be a bicycle. It doesn't have to be human powered, but it would be like you were describing with the mapping.
Mhm.
Ecological transit, is there, is there a waterway that's running this way? Is there public transit that's running that way? But in my own work of being an expeditionary teacher, I think that drinking the water and sleeping on the ground and cooking with twigs is really powerful medicine for people realizing that they live on this planet. And being able to call a place home. And so that interspersed with weeks of service, work, learning at these bioregional nodes looks to me like a really powerful educational experience for this demographic. Of like, and we haven't decided, and Croak is working on this, I'm working on this, you have a shared vision. I feel like there's a way that we might intertwine and create something really powerful. And I don't know, the exact age range, but like somewhere in the like 18 to 30 age range. Yeah.
There was just a big convergence up at the common ground before the fair, about a month before the fair that Formator's put on. And they're doing a lot of that, and that was the demographic. It's all, the 20 somethings, and I mean, there were, I wasn't the oldest person there. I mean, they were all age ranges, but it's really driven by Scotty Guzman
And
and.
he's gonna be here tonight.
Yeah,
She had-
and I'm sorry that they're not here because they're doing this thing where they're traveling around the bioregion, doing projects on the land, and they're building yurts, they were building a root cellar up at the Common Ground Fair during this convergence. They're going in places and building tiny houses, and it's just getting people to skill up, and they're also bringing this sort of sense of spirituality and belonging. And I mean, we were praying to the four directions every morning, led by this woman from Guatemala who was like the grandmother of everybody there. And it was just like, and then they would rave all night, to this music that didn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm like, well, where's all the reggae? Going on, but it was a super powerful gathering of people, and they were a gathering of the projects, people from the projects they had done from Boston to Western Mass to upstate New York. And so I think you're right, there is this yearning for this work and for people to get grounded. The people that were just coming over and like, hey, what are you doing? Picking up a shovel and peeling logs and just touching things and building things. And that's like super empowering, like putting food together. It was like, people were cycling through the kitchen. And it's just, yeah, I think there's.
And it's part of the anti-isolation, lonely academic thing. Epidemic. And Kaylee and I were just commenting on the way down here that there's been we structure in our 2-month apprenticeship a lot of free time with like having taught lessons in this or in that, and the expectation being that people are going to be then working on those handcraft projects or doing this forest study. And that given the chance, the most powerful thing that people engage with is just community time together. And that is also something that people are just legitimately seeking, is just be together and really reforming culture, like you were saying, right? Those four directions, or reclaiming roots, or saying, hey, I'm a human on earth and I want to feel in place and cultured and not be stealing directly from indigenous traditions, but saying, hey, I wanna build a new world.
Fundamental stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the sign that we have gone far wrong is seen in the fact that demographic that you just talked about, the suicide rate is really still going up and quite dramatically, especially in Black and Brown communities. And so that sense of not belonging, not having, we don't have, like, for young people, traditions of, that are in a lot of indigenous cultures of kind of a spirit walk or some, getting out there and really taking sole responsibility for yourself and learning who you are in nature. Those kinds of things are, we don't provide them for young people. And so the kinds of things that you're talking about, giving people a sense of their own agency and then being able to do that in community with others. It's exactly what the world needs. And if we even just worked on that, the cultural change would be enormous. If we just put all of our energy to that. But there's so many places to put energy. Yes, Paul.
Something I think about a lot is that there's going to come a time, I don't know where it is, when a whole bunch of people are gonna suddenly realize they're in deep trouble. I mean, a lot of people. It's gonna be huge. I don't know if it's gonna be a catastrophic weather event or a fall in the financial system, but something's gonna happen. And it's gonna be a whole bunch of people that don't talk this language at all and don't understand what in the world we're doing. And we have to be able to speak to them because there's going to be a lot of fear, anger, maybe violence. I don't know what all, but it's the first reaction is not going to be, oh, let's all come together and have community. That's not going to be the first thing I think of. It's going to be, I'm scared and I've got to find a way out of this. And if we have something to offer that can be heard, so you can craft it in a way that those people can hear who aren't familiar with any of the language we're talking about, none of it. We have some hope, because I think we have something to offer. We have to shape it in a way that people can hear it.
I think that's a really good point. I don't want to. Yes, please, ladies.
Right, yeah,
So
just
glad.
build on that a little bit, thinking about the potential, the Coherence Project is awesome, and it has so much potential, and one of the things I was thinking is people who are in the business world today, it's a little bit different than some of the businesses that we're all in, that don't yet see this framework, or can't see from this perspective, or haven't been taught how to see from this perspective and how to help them. And I think the Coherence Project has potential by getting people on the land. I think the same way with kids, you get people who are working in kind of a broken construct, but they're schooled in it, and that's the only way they know how to work. Getting them on the land, interacting with people, and introducing some of the concepts could be incredibly powerful. So I think of it in, there's the business world, there's the nonprofit world, there's education, and there's government. I think of those four kind of entities that we have within our economy and our system now. And this project, I think, has tremendous potential to reach into all four of those and help people transition from the systems we're in now to where we could be. And just a little note, I'll follow up with you, Roberta, but that will snack in Freeport. I think there could be some really good conversions.
Absolutely. And I would love to hear more about that. And so remember that I will be sending out an email, and I'm going to ask questions like, were there any projects that you would be interested in working more on? And then also get a sense of your, level of how much do you want to be involved, and because there's different spheres of engagement, which I think are perfectly legitimate. And so just get a sense of who might show up for particular meetings, work on particular projects. I do think that we could, with people in this room, organized around some of these projects and really carry them forward. I'm so excited.
I just want to name, it is a little bit past 8, and I think some of us are happy to stay around and continue the conversation, but I know some people drove far to get here, so as people are heading out, please do take cookies. And, but yeah, like Roberta said, we'll follow up.
And we might say goodbye to you people on Zoom, because bye, Amy.
Thank you, Roberta. Bye,
Okay,
CEBE.
thank you very much. That was great.
Bye. Bye.
Goodbye.